Justin Lynch, who's the advocacy manager at the Norwegian Refugee Council in Sudan. He joins us now from Khartoum as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the News Hour. You say there are approximately 13 million Sudanese who are in dire need of humanitarian assistance. Can you tell us more about those needs? Because, of course, Sudan has been racked by decades of conflict, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think that, when the revolution began, there was great hope that there would be peace across the country. But actually, we've seen the opposite for many Sudanese. This year alone, there have been more than 418,000 people who have been displaced, which is, at this rate, more than we've seen since at least 2009. And that's because in many parts of the country, particularly Darfur, this historic part of the country that has seen conflict, there has been a new chapter of conflict. About a quarter of the population needs humanitarian assistance. And so while there has been some changes in Khartoum, the rest of the country has suffered in reality.
We've also heard that the US is cutting a financial lifeline to Sudan, around $700 million worth that was promised to the country in response to those democratic reforms. What sort of an impact will that have if countries like the US and others choose to cut aid to the country in the wake of this coup?
Well, I think it's a great question. When you look at how that aid is actually appropriated, all of it goes to the people of Sudan. Most of it is in humanitarian aid. It's in a program called Food for Peace, which gives cash handouts to Sudanese, and it's also in development assistance, and it's in democracy assistance. And so this funding goes to help the Sudanese people directly, and the military does not touch any of this assistance at all. And so, if you're trying to figure out, will this pausing of military aid affect will this pausing of U.S. aid affect the military? No, not really. It will affect the Sudanese people rather than the generals.
So what are you calling for in terms of humanitarian assistance in Sudan right now?
Well, I think there's a short term and then there's a long term here. In the short term, I think that we need to make sure that civilians across the country are protected. The Sudanese government and the military has pledged to protect civilians, and we have seen how those pledges have not been implemented. So we need to really hold the Sudanese government and the military to account and make sure that they implement their promises. Now, the Sudanese government and the military signed what's called the Juba Peace Agreement in 2020, which really tried to end decades of conflict and address the root causes of conflict. But much like the protection of civilians plan that the government has promised, this Juba Peace Agreement has not been implemented either. And so, if we're looking at how the international community should engage going forward, they should really try and make sure that the Sudanese government, whoever they are, holds the military to account for their promises and make sure that these root causes of conflict that have, affected so many people are addressed.
Okay, Justin Lynch from the Norwegian Refugee Council. We'll have to leave it there, but best of luck with your work, and thanks again for joining us.